Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. Chapter 36. Skeleton Sniper, Dark Mage. Your servant, Skull Guard, is dead. Your servant, Skull Guard, is dead. Your servant, Skull Warrior, is dead. Your servant, Skull Warlord, has died. Your servant. In an instant, there are dozens of pieces of information refreshed from Suemu's attribute panel, all of which are news of the death of the skeleton brothers under his command. Before that, Suemu had taken over the control of the only skeleton commander under his command and checked the battle situation more than 10 kilometers away. After being surrounded by the three skeleton legions that belonged to the skeleton king were not in a hurry, they only surrounded and did not kill, as if they were waiting for the arrival of the skeleton king. And now, dozens of skeleton brothers were killed at almost the same time. It seems that only the skeleton king can do it. View switching. When Suemu focused his attention on a skeleton boy in the core of skeletons, he really saw that tall figure. The furious skeleton king rushed into his skeleton army, and the two-handed warhammer in his hand slammed down fiercely. An explosive shock wave spread with the warhammer as the center, shattering all the skeletons within a radius of dozens of meters and turning them into powder. The skeleton king is at war. Death Castle is about 10 kilometers away from the battlefield. It is conservatively estimated that it will take about 5 or 6 minutes for Skeleton King to rush from the battlefield to Death Castle. So, the soul fire in the eye sockets flickered slightly, and the bones of the whole body were tense at this moment. Suemu's body rushed out like a leopard that had finished charging, and the target was the bone sniper in the arrow tower. Step out. Over a distance of more than 10 meters. When the skeletal sniper and the two skeletal shooters beside him appeared in front of him, the skeletal sword in Suemu's hand raised high, and slashed out. Death cut. 10 dark blades of light erupted. It's like a cage that surrounds the skeleton sniper and two skeleton shooters. With the extremely sharp cutting sound, large pieces of bone powder flew up. Of the 10 light blades, the two skeleton shooters endured the first 4, and the remaining 6 were all endured by the skeleton sniper. When the dark edge disappeared, the 3 skeletons had been cut into several segments and lay on the ground. Click, click, click. With 3 consecutive crisp sounds, the heads left by the 3 skeletons were shattered, and then Suemu leaned down, eroding and absorbing the bones left by the skeletal sniper. You killed the skeleton sniper. You have gained 5,000 experience points. You killed the bone shooter, *2. You have gained 1,000 experience points. You have absorbed the essence of the bones, and your body is stronger. Your strength increased by 3. Your agility has increased by 45. Your physique has increased by 2 points. You have obtained the transfer information of the Warrior Professional Template Bone Sniper. The second Warrior Profession template is here. Taking a look at the information refreshed on the attribute panel, Suemu ignored the bones left by the 2 elite skeletons, left the arrow tower immediately, and dived towards the center of the castle. He is in a hurry. The skeletons left by the 2 elite skeletons could provide him with extremely limited attribute values, so he simply gave up. In the other 3 arrow towers on the city wall, there is also a skeleton sniper in each. However, their attention is mainly outside the Castle of Death. As long as they sneak into the Castle of Death, they can basically avoid the sight of the 3 skeletal snipers. Recalling the information he had received from the skeleton commander, Suemu moved cautiously along the edge of the castle aisle. This is the heart of the burial ground. Has the strongest aura of death. Nature. There are no plants in this castle. But the deserted open spaces and training grounds were covered with broken bones. Even in the corners of the aisles of the castle, there are a large number of skeletons and skeletons piled up. These are the skeletons left by those killed skeletons piled up over a long period of time. Carefully pass through the front yard of the castle and enter the interior of the castle. Suemu's movements stopped again. In front of him, 2 skeleton squads were passing through an aisle. There are 2 skeleton squads, one is a skeleton warrior led by a skeleton general, and the other is a skeleton archer led by a skeleton archer. Judging from the route of travel, the skeleton warrior team is going to patrol the front yard of the castle, and the skeleton archer team is going to patrol the interior of the castle. The 2 skeleton squads, one after the other, staggered across the fork in front of Suemu. Go slowly. Suemu calculated the travel time of the 2 skeleton teams. When the 2 skeleton teams overlapped on the fork, he suddenly rushed out of the hiding place in the aisle. Smashing the air. Soon, dark red light blades spread out. Tear up all the skeletons in the two skeleton teams and turn them into broken bones all over the ground. Su Mu quickened his pace, passed this fork, and entered the interior of the castle along the stairs. After arriving inside the castle, Su Mu felt much more relaxed. There are no patrols inside the castle, some just stand in one position for a long time without moving, like statue-like skeleton guards and skeleton guards. With Su Mu's abilities, sneaking into the castle without alerting these skeleton guards is a breeze. Soon, following the route in the memory of the skeleton commander, Su Mu bypassed many skeleton guards and appeared in a hall. This hall has a radius of more than 100 meters. In the entire hall, apart from a few stone pillars supporting the dome on both sides, the only decoration is the same stone throne located in the deepest part of the hall. This is Skeletron's location. Usually, the Skeleton King is sleeping on this throne. When needed, it is also in this hall to summon the skeleton subordinates of the many warriors under his command. In front of the throne, there are two doors on the left and right sides of the hall. These two doors, one leads to the bedroom, it should be the place where the owner of the castle rested at the very beginning, the other leads to the library, once, this was the place where the caster hired by the castle owner rested and studied. And now, in this library, there is a second target for Su Mu to hunt. Chapter 37. Inside the library, a figure is studying something in front of the stone table. This figure is extremely thin, and the whole body is shrouded in a worn robe with a hood. Only when the breeze blew in from the window of the library and blew the shabby robe up, the essence of what was hidden under the robe could be seen. Sense and bones. This is a skeleton. To be precise, it is a warrior-level skeleton who has stepped into the warrior rank, not only has a certain wisdom, but also awakened a trace of memory from his life, the Dark Mage. The burial grounds are scarce in resources. Except for the skeletons everywhere and the omnipresent breath of death, there is nothing to say. The so-called research of this Dark Mage is just to pass the time according to its habits before death. Perhaps, repeating this behavior can make it wake up more memories of its life. Click. The crisp footsteps sounded in the library room. The Dark Mage gave up the futile research, threw aside a skull on the stone table with the soul fire flickering in it, and turned around. Perhaps, in the knowledge of this Dark Mage, no one can nor dare to invade the Castle of Death. The sound of footsteps in the library meant that its cruel king was about to summon it again. However, when it turned around, what was waiting for it was not the skeleton guard of the past, but a dark edge. Death cut. The dark edge disappeared. After killing the Dark Mage with one big move, Su Mu habitually squatted down and absorbed the bones left by the warrior skeleton. You killed the Dark Mage. You have gained 6,500 experience points. You have absorbed the essence of the bones, and your body is stronger. Your spirit increased by 25 points. You have obtained the transfer information of the warrior profession template Dark Mage. The caster of the skeleton family is worthy of being a model of infirmity and thin blood. After absorbing the essence of his bones, in addition to a substantial increase in his spiritual attributes, his other three attributes did not increase at all. But, in comparison, Su Mu prefers this growth method. The most difficult thing for the skeleton family to grow is the spiritual attribute. He hunted the Dark Mage in order to integrate his professional template into his warrior profession, and when he next advanced, he could greatly improve his spiritual growth. Su Mu is delighted with this result. The third warrior career template is here. Your servant, Skull Warlord, has died. Your servant, Skull Mage, is dead. Your servant, Terror Mage, is dead. Your servant. On the property panel, a large amount of information is constantly refreshed, all the time. Indicates that his skeleton army is still under siege. View switching. When Su Mu looked around with the vision of a skeleton in the core of skeletons, the huge and terrifying figure of the Skeleton King had indeed disappeared from the battlefield. Instead, the three skeleton armies that are besieging Su Mu's skeleton brother. Su Mu didn't know if Skeletron had just left the battlefield, or if he had left the battlefield after killing the skeleton sniper himself. He counted the time. Almost 3 minutes have passed since the killing of the skeleton sniper. If the Skeleton King left the battlefield immediately after killing the skeleton sniper himself and rushed towards the Death Castle, conservatively, he still has about 2 minutes to hunt down the fourth skeleton warrior and get the fourth warrior profession template. 2 minutes. A skeleton warrior. Enough time. Because Su Mu had already planned the route when he sneaked into the castle. The fourth warrior skeleton he's hunting, just below this library. The entire Death Castle is a 3-tiered design. In the front is the front yard surrounded by the city wall and the arrow tower. The large open space was originally used as a training ground. In the middle is the main body of the castle, including the servant room on the lower floor, the warrior resting place on the middle floor and the hall on the upper floor. Lord's bedroom. Behind the castle is the prison. According to the habit of NPC nobles in Second World, the castle's prison is used to build underground in the entire castle. The entrance to the prison is at the rear of the castle. The main body of the castle and the wall behind the castle form a relatively closed space. Even if there is any movement in this closed space, it is not easy to attract attention. The fourth warrior skeleton that Su Mu wanted to hunt was located in this enclosed space. Just jump out of this library window, he can appear in front of that warrior skeleton. Near the window, Su Mu glanced down. Against the gloomy sky, he could vaguely see a burly figure at the entrance of the prison. After estimating the height and distance between the two, Su Mu climbed up the window with the skeleton knife in hand, unaware of the burly skeleton at the entrance of the prison, and jumped down. The castle is tall. The windows on the 3rd floor are at least 7 or 8 meters above the ground. With Su Mu's current 4-dimensional properties, this height is nothing. Not only will it not hurt him, but it will greatly enhance the power of his next blow. The sky was dark and gloomy. Under the cover of this night-like sky, Su Mu jumped out of the window like a big bird, with a flickering cold light, pounced towards the sturdy skeleton on the ground. The height of 7 or 8 meters is fleeting in the blink of an eye. When he was only 2 or 3 meters away from the sturdy skeleton, the skeleton sword in Su Mu's hand was already raised high. Next moment, all the power is poured into the skeleton sword. The blade that shone with cold light, under the dual blessing of Su Mu's own strength and the gravity brought by falling from a high altitude, slashed towards the neck of this sturdy skeleton. Death Cut. Chapter 38. Do. A series of dull clashing sounds spread far away. Su Mu's knife cut out smoothly. The jet black light blade that burst out of the death cutting also cut on the body of the sturdy skeleton. But not the neck. At the last moment when the death cut struck, this skeleton seemed to have a feeling in his heart, and at the same time as his body burst back, he blocked his body with a serrated bone knife like a door in his hand. Blocked the blow. The 10 blades of light were all slashed on the huge bone knife full of serrated teeth in the hands of the sturdy skeleton. Moreover, the damage of Su Mu's 20 times normal attack not only did not cut off the bone knife, but only left traces on it. Armed with skeletons, it is the most direct response to a skeleton's 4-dimensional attributes and defense capabilities. Although expected, but when he was really facing it, Su Mu knew how strong the defense capability of this warrior skeleton, who only focused on physical growth, was. That's right. The last skeleton that Su Mu wants to hunt is the skeleton that focuses on the growth of the physique, the advanced warrior of the skeleton guard, the skeleton warden. Skeleton masters, balance. Skeleton sniper, speed. Dark mage, spirit. Coupled with this skeleton warden who focuses on physique growth, the warrior profession that is based on the fusion of these 4 professional templates is the warrior profession Su Mu wants. Only, the defense ability of this skeleton warden seems to be beyond Su Mu's imagination. The skeleton warden is the skeleton warden and the skeleton warden's warrior tier. As a warrior profession in this evolutionary chain, its skeleton armament is not a tower shield like a skeleton guard and a skeleton guard, but a serrated bone knife like a door. Reason. Simple. Because the skeleton warden doesn't need tower shields to enhance his defense at all. The skeleton warden is not tall. Even shorter than Su Mu, only a little over 1.7 meters. But this is not a tall body, but it seems like bone hyperplasia, filled with a lot of bones. Ordinary skeletons have only one skeleton, and the inside of the skeleton is hollow. The skeleton warden's skeletal body gave birth to countless long bone spurs, and these bone spurs grew in a disorderly manner, almost completely filling the inside of the skeleton warden's skeleton. Simply put, ordinary skeletons, including today's Su Mu, are just an empty shell composed of bones, but this skeleton warden is an entity composed of countless bones. With such a body, Combined with the super high physique of the skeleton warden, it is no wonder that it has a physical defense beyond Suemu's imagination. Corresponding to his super physique and defense, the skeleton warden is very slow. Not only because its agility growth length is too low, the bone spurs that almost completely fill the inside of the skeleton are also an important factor affecting the speed of the skeleton warden. Suemu's fatal blow was blocked by the skeleton warden. The serrated bone knife in its hand also slashed out the next moment, attacking Suemu's side. But skeleton warden is too slow. Not much better than the hordes of zombies Suemu has ever encountered. With just a flick of a flash, he dodged the blow. Subsequently, the sturdy and powerful right limb slammed heavily on the ground, leaving a deep footprint on the ground. Suemu's body also increased in speed at this moment, and appeared behind the skeleton warden. Death cut. For the first time, Suemu had already seen the terrifying defensive ability of the skeleton warden, and he no longer had any luck in his heart. Normal attacks are difficult to deal damage to the skeleton warden. Only the death cut boss skill can make him kill the skeleton warden as soon as possible and obtain his professional template. And, to avoid the front of the skeleton warden with the strongest defense. Like zombies, slow speed is the biggest weakness of the skeleton warden. As a guard, the skeleton warden is well deserved. When it appears on the battlefield, it can also play a huge role. But in this one-on-one battle, the skeleton warden can only be a moving target. The second cut of death cuts out. The 10 blades of light were connected into one piece, and at the moment of bursting out, they slashed on the body of the skeleton warden. And it's its neck. All skeletons have weaknesses, and the skeleton warden is no exception. Even a skeleton warden with such a level of physical defense, after his neck is cut off, he can still only be slaughtered. Aside from speed, the neck is the biggest weakness of the skeleton warden. One strike. The deadly attack of 20 times the normal attack slashed on the neck of the skeleton warden, directly severing half of the skeleton warden's cervical vertebrae. Just one more knife. The career template owned by this warrior skeleton will become Suemu's trophy. Only, maybe it was because the skeleton warden felt the danger of death, or maybe it was because Suemu's luck was really bad. After being hit by Suemu, the skeleton warden roared violently. A series of crisp footsteps gradually came, getting closer and closer. Not only that, Suemu also clearly felt that an extremely terrifying aura was coming at an extremely fast speed, approaching the Death Castle. His heart sank. Skeletons in the castle were alerted. At the same time, the Skeleton King is also coming back faster than he expected. Chapter 39. Retreat. Still not going back. The skeletons in the Death Castle have been alerted, and it will not be long before a large number of elite skeletons and warrior skeletons will appear, besieging him in this closed space. And judging from the speed at which the terrifying aura was approaching, it won't take too long, and the Skeleton King who has approached the Death Castle will also appear in front of him. No matter how confident he is in his own strength, Suemu has to admit that if he is trapped here, when the Skeleton King appears, what awaits him is a mortal kill. But, just retreating like this, Suemu was even more reconciled. The collection of the 4 major professional templates is only the last knife. If he just retreats like this, it will be very difficult for him to find such a good opportunity in the future. The level of intelligence of the Skeleton King is not much worse than that of human beings. With this experience, I am afraid that next time Suemu will face a trap. Retreat. Of course not. The angry roar of the Skeleton King has come from far away, which indicates that this terrifying existence has entered the Castle of Death and is rushing towards this side. This feeling of death approaching not only did not make Suemu feel intimidated, but made his blood boil. This is the first time that Suemu has felt this way since he was reborn into the icy race of skeletons. Wealth is in danger. Since he wants to become the strongest boss in the history of the game world, the Skeleton King of the Mere Lord rank, how can he become an obstacle to him? All kinds of thoughts flashed through his mind like lightning, and Suemu made a decision in his heart. Reinforcements have arrived. In the dense footsteps, a tall skeleton with a 2-handed sword appeared in the closed space with more than 10 elite skeletons and advanced skeletons, blocking the only way out of this space. Behind Suemu is the skeleton warden. In front of him was this tall skeleton that had just arrived. Behind this tall skeleton, more warrior skeletons and elite skeletons are coming. In the front yard of the Castle of Death, the Skeleton King, who is out of anger, is coming at full speed. Boom! A heavy foot stomped on the ground. Su Emu's figure soars into the air. Instead of rushing towards the skeleton warden, he rushed towards the tall skeleton standing in front of him. Death cut. Smashing the air. The two boss skills were cut out one after another, and the dark blade of light and the dark red light flashed alternately, shrouding the isle within a range of tens of meters. The tall skeleton took the lead and was shrouded in two boss skills. Also in the warrior rank, this tall skeleton is far from the tyrannical defense ability of the skeleton warden, and was beheaded the moment he was hit by death cut. Then, the dark red blade of light split apart, and while beheading the elite skeletons and advanced skeletons in the isle, it also continued to split and extend into the distance, so that the skeletons who came to help later had to temporarily avoid the edge. Killing a warrior skeleton with one knife, Su Mu didn't stand still. He grabbed the skeleton of the warrior whose soul was still burning, jumped to avoid the attack of the skeleton warden, and appeared behind it. The second time, the skeleton warden turned his back to himself. With a slight movement of his jawbone, as if smiling, Su Mu passed the skeleton warden with his back to him and glanced ahead. The tall and terrifying figure appeared. The Skeleton King has arrived. Only, the enclosed space where Skeletron and Su Mu are located is separated by a hallway. And in the aisle, it was crowded with warrior skeletons, elite skeletons and advanced skeletons who were alerted before and came to help. About 100 meters away, the Skeleton King, who was already in a state of rage, could only watch helplessly as Su Mu raised the skeleton sword again and slashed it towards the skeleton warden's neck for the second time. Death cut. No surprises. In the first death cutting, the neck of the skeleton warden had been cut off in half. When the 10 rays of light that erupted for the second time cut continuously on his neck, even if the neck of the skeleton warden is similar to his body, it is also shrouded in a large number of intricately growing bone spurs, and it is difficult to avoid being decapitated by a knife. Destiny. The blade of light disappeared. The head of the skeleton warden also fell to the ground. Grabbing the skeleton warden's head, which was much larger than the tall skeleton, and stuffing it under his ribs, Su Mu charged at the fastest speed and ran towards the end away from the Skeleton King. This is a semi-enclosed space. That's right. The way to leave is the road that Skeletron is on. But, Su Mu is not a fool, let alone those skeletons without any wisdom. The normal passage can't leave, won't he find another way? Rushing to the edge of the enclosed space at the fastest speed, Su Mu jumped and jumped several meters high. When he was exhausted and about to fall, the skeleton sword in his hand stabbed out and easily pierced into the stone city wall. With the help of the skeleton Moblade, Su Mu jumped up for the second time and appeared on the thick city wall. At this time, Skeleton King seems to have reacted too. The two-handed warhammer in its hands heavily bombarded the ground, sending the surrounding skeletons flying, while it jumped and chased towards Su Mu. Only, the Skeleton King is strong and strong. Its speed may not be able to catch up with Su Mu. When the Skeleton Dynasty rushed towards the city wall, Su Mu jumped lightly, jumped off the city wall, and went away at the fastest speed, disappearing into the vast sky. The city walls. Only the tall and terrifying figure of the Skeleton King. As well as an angry roar spread far and wide. Chapter 40. After half a day, in a wilderness hundreds of kilometers away from Death Castle, Su Mu stopped. It was only at this time that he took out the two skulls. The soul fire in the skull is still burning, which means that the two skeletons who have stepped into the warrior ranks are still alive. But, losing their bodies and leaving only a skull, the only thing they can do is to keep opening and closing their mandibles, trying to bite Su Mu in this way. Looking at the two skulls, Su Mu's mood was a little complicated. The two skulls represent the professional templates of the two warrior ranks. In order to obtain these career templates and gather the materials for his advanced warrior career, his losses can be described as heavy. Little brother Skeleton, there is not one left. When Skeletron himself appeared on the battlefield, his warrior skeletons and elite skeletons were the first to be struck. Even the skeleton of the warrior rank is still fragile in front of the Skeleton King. With only the skeleton leader and dozens of elite skeletons under his command, it is naturally difficult to bear the revenge of the Skeleton King. Advanced skeleton. Skeletons enslaved by Su Mu are difficult to be enslaved and recruited by Skeleton King or Skeleton Leader. When the Skeleton King left, the three skeleton armies were ordered by the Skeleton King to surround Suemu's little skeleton brothers, beheading them all, but not a single one was left. After decades of hard work, I returned to before liberation. This is the current Suemu. He is officially a loner. Fortunately, despite all the sacrifices of the skeleton brother, he himself walked around the gate of hell and was almost trapped in the death castle to face the furious Skeleton King. His goal was finally achieved. Not only have all the 4 career templates in the plan come together, but there is also an additional warrior career template. At this time, looking at the 2 skulls in front of him, Suemu thought for a moment. He was considering whether to smash the 2 skulls directly to obtain their occupation templates and free points, or to enslave them and turn them into his own skeleton brothers. Killing it will give Suemu his job template, as well as the free points represented by the 2 warrior skeletons. Attribute values are unnecessary. The bodies of these 2 warrior skeletons are all in the Castle of Death, and even the erosion talent cannot absorb the essence of their bones from such a long distance. In the case of enslavement, Suemu can still obtain his professional template. After losing the free points represented by these 2 warrior skeletons, he can immediately obtain 2 skeleton brothers of warrior rank. Although the bodies of these 2 skeleton brothers have fallen in the Castle of Death, but find them too advanced or elite ranks. Under the dual nourishment of death breath and their own soul fire, they will eventually recover their original strength. That day, at least a lot faster than raising 2 warrior skeletons. One side is free points. On one side is the skeleton boy. After careful consideration, Suemu finally chose free points. Free points are never out of date. No matter how many free points you hoard, Suemu can't get enough of them. What about the skeleton boy? Actually, after facing the Skeleton King and feeling the power of the Lord, Suemu did not think that the warrior skeleton could bring any threat to the Skeleton King. Even if it is a dozen or even dozens of warrior skeletons combined, they are not necessarily the opponents of the Skeleton King. No doubt, Suemu and Skeletron are mortal enemies. Whether it was because his evolutionary path required a hunting career template, or because of this raid on the Death Castle, it was determined that he was destined to face the Skeleton King. And in this level of war, the warrior skeleton plays a small role. In contrast, improving his own strength is most in line with Suemu's idea. As for the skeleton boy, if one day, Suemu can replace Skeleton King as the ruler of the boneyard, he can even turn all the skeletons in the boneyard into his own little brother. Thinking of this, Suemu made a decision. The skeleton knife stabbed and smashed the soul fire in the skull, and he began to absorb the information contained in the skull. You killed the Skull Warden. You have gained 6,300 experience points. You have absorbed the essence of the bones, and your body is stronger. Your physique has increased by 3 points. You have obtained the job transfer information of the Warrior Profession Template, Skeleton Warden. You killed the Bone Raider. You have gained 6,100 experience points. You have absorbed the essence of the bones, and your body is stronger. Your strength increased by 2. You have obtained the transfer information of the Warrior Professional Template Bone Raider. 2 more career templates are available. The attribute value absorbed from the skull is negligible. What surprised Suemu was that the Bone Assaulter profession he accidentally acquired was a warrior profession focused on strength growth. Original. The fusion materials selected by Suemu are the 4 occupations of Skeleton Commander, Skeleton Sniper, Skeleton Warden, and Dark Mage, corresponding to the 4 attributes of strength, agility, constitution and spirit respectively. Skeleton Commander is more focused on controlling skeletons, and the growth rate of the strength attribute is not very high. However, in the absence of other options, it is not satisfactory to use the 4-dimensional attribute of the Skeleton Commander into a relatively balanced occupation to represent the strength attribute. No one would have thought that Suemu, just to block the 2 skills released by the skeleton reinforcements, brought him a professional template focusing on the growth of strength attributes. Naturally, there is no need to replace the Skeleton Commander. Strength, Agile, Constitution, Spirit. The 4 warrior professional templates representing these 4 attributes appeared in front of him, and Suemu felt a burst of sincere joy in his heart. Take a look at your own properties panel. He started his second career fusion. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.